Hello there and welcome to the paddock of Le Mans, the Circuit de la Sarthe. I'm John Hindhaugh for RadioLeMans.com and for Simraceway, who are powering our coverage of Test Day and the global coverage of Le Mans 2012, the 80th anniversary of this great motor race. Alongside me, Allan McNish, one of Simraceway's development driver, to talk about what we're likely to see in a couple of weeks' time when we come back from the race. We haven't had the test day as yet, but Audi have got no competition, Alan, so how are you going to decide who's going to win? Is it rock, paper, scissors between the four cars?
I wish it was. You know, it's the 80th edition, and I think you've been around since the first edition, so you should know that there's always competition. It's a funny race, though, because if you take the other competitors aside, to some extent you've got to beat the race before you can beat the competition. You've got to make sure your car lasts for 24 hours at any speed. You've got to make sure that you keep out of trouble. You've got to make sure that you see that checkered flag. The competition, that's another factor, and, you know, unfortunately we've lost Peugeot. They pulled out right at the last gasp, last minute, and everybody was sad about that, there's no question. I saw some Peugeot guys here and they've still got heavy hearts, but Toyota stepped into the breach, and I know the guys at Toyota. I raced for them in Formula 1, I raced for them here in 1999, and there's a lot of the same personnel, and I think we can be pretty clear they're going to be fast. The difficult thing is we don't know how fast because we haven't seen them run, but we're all anticipating 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, and then we'll get our first sniff of how quick that Toyota is going to be.
Even if Toyota, and this is the first time they've had the car out in race conditions, even if they can't find the ultimate pace, is it a real race between the four Audis, or is somebody somewhere going, come on guys, now just take it steady?
Nah, well, first things first is that we saw last year that being fast is one thing but finishing's another thing. And
going out in the first hour is not part of the plan then, is it not?
No, I've got 23 hours to catch up on, that's the funny thing. But when you look at it, each time that I've won here, we haven't been the fastest car in the race. We've been very quick in qualifying, but we haven't been the fastest car in the race. So it is a case about making sure your strategy's right. That's one thing with Toyota, because they've got a petrol engine. They've got 15 litres more fuel than us, and that's over 2 laps. So they can run 2 laps longer every tank of fuel, and that probably will equate to about 3-4 minutes in the pits at the end of the race. And that could be critically important. It's not just about lap time. However, internally within us, we are very lucky that we've got Dr. Ulrich as our boss, and he tends to say, boys, you get out there and you race and the fastest car wins, but don't crash into each other. That's our strict code of conduct. We cannot crash into each other.
Are you hoping for a wet race? Because at Spa we saw that the e-tron Quattro, which is the hybrid part-time four-wheel drive version of the R18, was very good in intermediate and wet conditions. Perhaps didn't quite have the balance of the all-diesel rear-wheel drive car had in the wet.
Yeah, if it's wet, it's wet, so same for everybody. But what we did find was, and it was our first time in the wet with the e-tron Quattro, that basically driving the front wheels with the hybrid seemed to be effective. However, I have to say, hand on heart, that I think the fact that the other two cars, the Ultras, were driven by drivers that it was their first ever race with Audi, and you don't want to be thrown into that difficult, wet, Spa, cold condition and make a silly mistake. So I think there was a little bit of tentativeness there. But it was clear that the e-tron Quattro was quick out the box in the wet, and if it is, you know, like that come a couple of weeks' time, I'll accept it. I'm Scottish, for goodness sakes. We know what it's like to drive in the wet.
Well, you can follow Alan and the rest of the Audi team every step of the way, not only on test day, but throughout race week on RadioLeMans.com, brought to you by Simraceway.